Hello Whisky fans, today we've got another bourbon review. Kind of anyway. It is an American whiskey and it's made by the Tuthiltown distillery in New York, I believe that's the correct pronunciation, and it's Hudson Baby Bourbon. Now the Tuthiltown distillery, it's a reasonably new distillery and it's actually been recently sold to William Grant & Sons, although at least at the moment it doesn't seem like they've changed too much, which I think is really good because I quite like everything that I've tried from that distillery so far. Now this one in particular, it's not just the name that's curious about this, Hudson Baby Bourbon, and it doesn't give you much of an explanation as to why it's called Baby Bourbon on the label. It's technically an American corn whiskey and it's matured in very small casks. It's matured in virgin oak casks of around 9 litres in size, 2 gallons. So that's possibly another reason why this is a baby bourbon, because it's matured in really small casks. So a 9 litre virgin oak cask, just to give you a perspective of how small that is, anyone that knows their whiskey cask sizes, it's probably around a fifth of the size of a blood tub. And it's around 20 to 30 times smaller than your standard ASB American Standard Bourbon barrel. So it's actually the kind of cask that you don't actually see very often at all. It's not a common type of cask for maturing whiskey. It's the sort of thing that you could probably fairly comfortably lift and carry around yourself. So me personally, when I hear that something's been matured in those extra small casks, that usually says one of two things to me. Either they're trying to get some real oak influence into the spirit quite quickly, so some of those spicy, extractive, tannic, wood spicy notes that you get from raw oak, or they're trying to take a very young spirit and they're trying to get something into it, trying to get some sort of flavour and perhaps colour into the whiskey as quick as they can. And another thing that's baby about this, you might have realised I'm not a giant. This is it's a 35 centilitre bottle, so it's a half-size bottle. And where I am here in the UK, a few of the online retailers are giving fairly regular, really good discounts on these half-size bottles. Now I'm not sure if that's because this is a kind of end-of-the-line product or perhaps it's not selling well, but the discount that I had on this, I got it for about £20, was enough to get me interested enough to try it, and I think it's a really good price for what you get for this. So having a look at the label, Hudson Baby Bourbon, 35 centilitres, pot distilled from 100% New York corn. So that's good that they're actually telling us what the mash bill is on the label, even if it is a slightly odd 100% corn. And they're also telling us that they're using at least reasonably local New York corn. Handcrafted and bottled by Tuthiltown Spirits, Gardner, New York, hudsonwhiskey.com. Actually says the year that this was distilled, 2018 on the back, batch number 17, bottle number 4422. Just reading from the label, Hudson Baby Bourbon is the first legal aged grain spirit to be produced in New York's Hudson Valley since Prohibition. So reading on, pot distilled, so that's a big thumbs up from me. Anyone that likes their Scotch is going to be a fan of pot stills. From 100% New York State corn, it was double distilled and aged in petite American oak casks, or baby bourbon owes its rich colour and character to the small barrel aging process employed by the distiller. Also interesting to note that if you have a look online, you will see references to do with this whiskey being aged sonically with bass speakers. So that sounds kind of similar to what they're doing at ETOH, using ultrasonic emitters to agitate and promote interaction between the spirit and the cask. But from what I've seen, what they're doing at Hudson Tuthiltown Distillery looks a little bit more low-tech, because they're actually using what look to be sort of home stereo system bass speakers just to vibrate and agitate those casks. And spoiler, I think that actually works quite well, because if this is less than 2 years old, I think this is actually a very respectable effort for such a young age. So let's get some in the glass and see what we've got. Also notice that I really like the presentation on this one. Traditional sort of textured cream label, nice and simple. It's got a bit of information, batch number and everything on there, and a nice cork stopper, and all sealed in wax. So 10 out of 10 for presentation there. Also mention, if I haven't done already, that this is 46%. So with things like this, always important to keep an open mind, because it is a very strange and very different spirit potentially. So you have to try as hard as you can not to compare it too directly with things like bourbon, obviously Scotch. Let's see how it smells. So, me, being a Scotch drinker, I think that's a perfectly respectable nose. Getting lots of toffee, caramel, and also quite a nice spiciness. Lots of wood spice, black pepper, and also a little bit of a starchy note, something sort of like whole wheat pasta. Now, when you get a starchy note on a whiskey, I do quite often associate that with youth, quite often being a bit too young, but I think in this one it really goes with the rest of the spirit quite well, and I don't think I'm going to actually mark it down at all for that. It actually works really well. So to summarise, the nose, quite sweet, quite spicy, little bit of character, and actually doesn't come off too young despite what we can assume is probably quite a short maturation. Let's see how it tastes. So there's absolutely no mistaking what you've got here. From the taste of this one, it may or may not be a bourbon, but it's definitely an American whiskey. Getting lots of black pepper, lots of sweet nuttiness, quite a bit of wood spice, although it's not an overly gingery, overly modern, heavy-handed sort of experience that you might get out of a lot of whiskies that are matured in very small, very virgin oak. Also getting some nice licorice notes and a little hint of lemon thyme, and that lemoniness, I think that goes with the sweetness on this one really well. Just going to have another sip and look at the finish. It really is a very enjoyable whiskey. I know smooth is quite frowned upon by a lot of people, and it's perhaps not a useful tasting note, but the whole experience of this one, and it might be because I was slightly expecting a youthful harsh spirit, but there really is a lovely sweet caramel, smooth sweetness to this that's really enjoyable. As for the finish, I'm going to say medium long, with lots of lovely sweet and sour spiciness on the tail end. Now, that spiciness, I do need to talk about that, because if I didn't know the mash bill on this one, I would probably take that spiciness to be a little bit of a sign of some rye on the mash bill. That lemony spice with a little bit of sour grassy character, it is the sort of thing that you would normally put down to rye, but we know that this is 100% New York corn, so we know that there's no rye in there. So it's actually really odd that it's kind of like the most rye-dominated non-rye whiskey you've ever had, and we probably have to assume that that spiciness is coming from those virgin oak casks. But like I said before, it's not heavy-handed with the oaky wood spice. It all works really well. Now, I'm really interested to hear what you guys think of this one, because I have heard some quite mixed reviews. So in the comments, if you've had this one, let me know what sort of thing you normally enjoy drinking and what you thought about this one. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts, and see you next time. Cheers.